Coming up, Cubans prepare to amp up their protests over the purported abuse of detainees.
Also ahead, a police superintendent accused of a cover-up as the Kofi Goodman murder trial continued today.
And a familiar face is now iconic, and he's one of our own. The National Report starts now.
Now in HD. ZNS Network presents The Bahamas Tonight. This segment of the news is brought to you by BTC, powered by Lime.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kishal Adderley.
And I'm Candino Knowles. As always, it's good to have you with us.
Topping the news tonight, the country's leader is expressing concern tonight over the potential impact a series of Cuban protests in Florida could have on the country's reputation. This ahead of a demonstration planned for Friday as a cruise leaves the port of Miami for Nassau.
Well, the groups are protesting the purported abuse of Cuban detainees at the detention center. And Andrew Knowles spoke with the Prime Minister on the government's plan to try and quell tensions over the issue.
The video that Bahamian officials have dismissed as fabrication continues to draw criticisms from Cuban exile groups in Florida. Protesters are now planning to stage another demonstration on Friday as cruise ships leave the port of Miami for Nassau. U.S. officials even expressed concern over the video to Prime Minister Perry Christie, prompting Cabinet to come up with a strategy.
I spoke with elected officials in Florida who happened to be attending the launch and expressed some concern to me and asking me to ensure that we act in a humane fashion. That's when I realized how significant it was. And I invited them to come to the Bahamas to look at the facility so they don't have to guess and they don't have to be on the receiving end of bad information.
But not only that, Prime Minister Christie says government is moving ahead with building new facilities here at the detention center. In fact, Deputy Prime Minister Philip Davis says construction is set to begin real soon on 2 new dormitories at a cost of just under $2 million.
That will enable people who are housed in those buildings to be housed properly in terms of comfort and securely in terms of the building itself. The government has dedicated the monies for those buildings to be built, and the intention is to have them built in the shortest possible time, starting now.
Mr. Christie also hopes local U.S. officials will be a part of what's taking place so they can be in a position to authenticate the information the Bahamas puts out.
We are fully aware of the intention to demonstrate, how they propose to do so in the harbor out there with cruise ships and holding signs up. And we are going to continue to talk to representatives of the Cuban American community. The Ministry of Tourism has been doing that with a view to giving a greater understanding of our position and with a view to being able to get the representatives of those who agitate to be able to say there is another way. You can actually come to the Bahamas and talk with representatives of the government.
In a statement, Foreign Affairs Minister Fred Mitchell reiterated that the Bahamas does not condone inhumane treatment of people detained at its facilities. He called on the protesters to desist from defaming the country. Andrew Knowles, ZNS Network News.
Heated exchanges were sparked in Parliament over the proposed stem cell research and therapy bill today. The government is adamant that it's on the right path with the introduction of the legislation, while some opposition members are expressing a lack of confidence in the government's ability to enforce related regulations. Our Carla Palmer has more.
Throughout his contribution, the Member of Parliament for North Eleuthera, Theo Neely, was interrupted on points of order by 3 of the doctors in the cabinet, all accusing him of misleading the Parliament. In his contribution, Mr. Neely spoke repeatedly to the pitfalls of embryonic stem cell therapy. However, the problem government parliamentarians had with his contribution is that embryonic stem cell therapy was not the subject being debated, but rather stem cell therapy as it relates to using a person's own stem cell tissue from another area of the body to heal or cure a problem area. Still, Mr. Neely stuck to and completed his prepared text, saying that he does not support the bill. He's not convinced that the government has the enforcement capability to ward off unethical procedures that he says could possibly arise with the passing of this bill. Member of Parliament for Marathon and Minister of Education, the Honourable Jerome Fitzgerald, says he's not sure what all the talk is all about and questioned whether there is genuine concern by members opposite. Minister Fitzgerald says the government did its homework when first confronted with the stem cell issue. In fact, Minister Fitzgerald says the stem cell therapy bill is a result of the government's desire to provide legislation and to regulate and govern the industry after approvals were granted by the Free National Movement. He said with those approvals in hand, the company had already spent $5.5 million in construction and related costs to provide stem cell therapy on Grand Bahama. According to Mr. Fitzgerald, the former administration did this with no regulations, act or legislation in place. Opposition leader, the Honourable Dr. Hubert Minnis, stood on a point of order, asking that evidence to this allegation be tabled. Still, Minister Fitzgerald noted what he referred to as the hypocrisy of the opposition and continued his contribution, saying, quote, that the government is focused and will continue to do what is right for the Bahamian people and will not be distracted, end quote. Member of Parliament for Central and South Eleuthera, the Honourable Damien Gomez, branded the former administration's actions of giving permission to conduct stem cell research and therapy without the proper regulation and lack of legislation as irresponsible and reckless. He maintains that this Christie-led government held widespread consultation on the issue with the Christian Council and the medical community before this bill was legally drafted. Member of Parliament for South Beach, Mrs. Cleola Hamilton, also supports the bill. Throughout today's debate, a reference was also made to multi-millionaire and philanthropist Peter Nygaard. The opposition continues to allege that Mr. Nygaard, as a key financial supporter of the Progressive Liberal Party government, is the principal reason why the government is pushing this legislation. Several parliamentarians denied this allegation. Minister Jerome Fitzgerald says, and I quote, "What I know of Mr. Peter Nygaard is not what people say, but what I know. That he's been a permanent resident of the Bahamas since 1984 for over 30 years. That he's contributed millions to the country's development and that he says he is a friend of the Bahamas. He has no criminal record and has not been charged with any offense. I'm not sure what all the hullabaloo is all about," end quote. Member of Parliament for Golden Gates, the Honourable Shane Gibson, noted similar thoughts, while the Member of Parliament for Montague, Richard Lightburn, amid many points of order, continued to hammer home the apparent opposition's position that the bill was being pushed in the interest of Mr. Nygaard. I'm Carla Palmer for ZNS Network News.
Well, have you paid your real property taxes lately? If you haven't, you still have a little more time to take advantage of a government amnesty. Janelle Noel Ferguson spoke with State Finance Minister Michael Alkitis, who's encouraging persons to make payments to avoid being burdened by arrears.
The amnesty period for real property tax has been extended until next month. State Minister for Finance Michael Alkitis says this gives landowners a chance to write off their arrears and begin anew. Since the program was launched earlier this year, Alkitis said the response has been overwhelming and the government hopes to give the majority of persons a chance to get back on track.
There's an exemption on the first $250,000 of the value, and then following that the rates are very low. So we're not talking about a large amount of money, but we recognize that, again, the government needs resources in order to provide the services, and we want to make sure that our tax rolls are complete. Those who should pay their portion, so that we spread the responsibility over the whole population.
Now we understand that those accounts remain delinquent for a number of reasons, racking up a price tag in the thousands.
Individuals who would have had commercial property or maybe living in a portion of the property and renting a portion. So in some instances, we're talking about several $1,000s. And we recognize that, the last few years have been kind of difficult for some individuals. And so we wanted to make sure that, give them an opportunity to sort of wipe the slate clean.
But if you missed the August deadline, Alkitis said persons would have to pay the full amount owed. At last count, about 1,000 new accounts have been established. Alkitis says this is encouraging.
We've collected in excess of $14 million from persons who have come forward to pay, and we've had to pay out approximately just over $2 million in rebates to those individuals who were current and now have the advantage of the rebate. So we've been able to credit them about $2 million.
Now, Halkitis says a more proactive approach must be taken to get these fees. He says a compliance department will be established to ensure that the backup and arrears of accounts won't happen again. Janae Noel Ferguson, ZNS Network News.
Testimony continued today in the Kofi Goodman murder trial, with the defense continuing to criticize the police investigation which led to Goodman's arrest. Assistant Superintendent of Police Bernard Bonamy was back on the stand today for another round of cross-examination. Fern Carey has more.
Defense attorney Jeffrey Farquharson continued his cross-examination of lead investigator ASP Bernard Bonamy this Wednesday, suggesting that Bonamy had a motive all along during his investigation into the death of 11-year-old Marco Archer. Farquharson suggested that Bonamy planned to pin the crime on somebody else other than his friend Maydon Knowles, who also lived in a unit at the Yorkshire Street apartment complex where the defendant Kofi Goodman lived. However, Bonamy refuted those suggestions. Farquharson also questioned Bonamy again about the quality of the police investigation into the death of Marco Archer, asking the senior police officer if he had personally checked the 5 units at the apartment complex on Yorkshire Street, prompting Bonamy to explain that he left specific instructions as to what should be done and had left officers there to carry them out. He also indicated that he personally checked all of the units except number 5 because his inquiries showed that no one lived there. Farquharson also wanted to know if Bonamy could smell a dead body when he arrived at the crime scene back on September 28th of 2011. And Bonamy noted that he was able to smell the body the closer he got to it. And when asked why he had never asked another resident at the Yorkshire Street apartment complex, Senior Police Officer Robert Taylor, who is a relative of Kofi Goodman, how the body could be there and he not smell it, Bonamy said he did not know that Taylor lived there. Now, prosecutors are expected to call about 3 more witnesses, after which they are expected to close their case. Once that's done, the defense is expected to open their case. Fern Carey, ZNS Network News.
Well, prosecutors were expected to continue the cross-examination of Makiko Black today. However, the matter has been put off until tomorrow as Black took ill during the proceedings. Black is accused of killing her husband, Defense Force Officer Leonardo Black, back on April 19th of 2010. She testified earlier that she and her husband had an argument at their apartment on the day he was killed, noting that when the incident happened, they both reached for a loaded shotgun, which went off. Now, during cross-examination, lead prosecutor Anthony Delaney suggested to Black that her husband had taught her how to use a shotgun during some of her visits to the Defense Force base. But Black maintained that she had never handled a gun. The trial continues before Justice Vera Watkins.
Police are searching for 5 men they want to question for murder. They've released all-points bulletins for the arrests of the men ranging in age from 18 to 30. Police need your help in locating 25-year-old Gibson Baptiste of Golden Isles Road. Baptiste stands at 6 feet tall and is of medium build and dark brown complexion. 30-year-old Jermaine Scott of Dominica Street, Golden Gates, is also wanted. He stands at 6 feet 1 inch tall and is of medium brown complexion. 18-year-old Leo Bethel of Balls Alley stands at 5 feet 9 inches tall and is of medium brown complexion. Also wanted by police is 20-year-old Ramil Gray. He is a resident of William Street. He stands at 5 feet 8 inches tall and is of slim build and medium brown complexion. Samiko Rigby, a 25-year-old resident of Palm Tree Avenue, is also wanted. He is of medium build and stands 5 feet 8 inches tall. If you have information about any of these men which may assist police, you're asked to contact them at 502-9991 or 502-9910.
In our first look at whether that mid-level trough is finally beginning to push off towards the west and away from the islands. However, undercutting that is a tropical wave, which is over the central Bahamas, will move into the northwest Bahamas tomorrow morning, firing up some showers and thunderstorms in the northern islands. But outside of our studios just now, we have mostly cloudy skies, your temperature 81 degrees, relative humidity 74%, winds out of the east at 6 knots, your barometric pressure 1,018.4 millibars, that's 30.07 inches, and it is falling. But stay tuned. Temperatures around the Boundary of Islands, travel and boating forecast is still to come.
Well, straight ahead, what's causing so many small businesses to fail? The country's business community takes a look coming up.
And later on, we talk with an Icon Award winner you may recognize. You're watching The Bahamas Tonight.
This portion of the news is brought to you by Shell Helix Ultra. Performance you can see.